Now that the 2022 season has come to a close and draft season is starting, I thought it would be a good idea to do a first round mock draft. So this will only be the first 32 picks in the draft, and I will not have any trades in this video because free agency hasn't happened yet, and they're just too unpredictable as of now. Also, this mock draft is what I think teams are going to do, not necessarily what I would do, so just keep that in your mind when watching this video. Starting off with the first pick in the draft, Jaguars are now on the clock, and I have them taking Evan Neal, tackle out of Alabama. For me personally, I don't necessarily like this pick. I think Neal is more of a developmental prospect. He's kind of a boomer bust guy. And for me, you don't take someone like that with the number 1 overall pick, but it seems like, especially with the Doug Peterson hire, this Jaguars team wants to go heavily focused on offense and building around Trevor Lawrence. They're not too concerned with their defense as of now, so I think Neal or Ekwonu will be the first pick. I think Ekwonu is better, but Neal is probably what they're going to go with. Moving on to the number 2 pick in the draft, where I have the Detroit Lions selecting Aiden Hutchinson, edge out of Michigan. Now, a lot of people think that he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, but honestly, he isn't my edge 1 right now. I still think Thibodeau is slightly better. Not knocking Aiden Hutchinson at all. He's an amazing prospect. And this is a really good pick for the Lions in my opinion. Their defense is really not good, so get that cornerstone edge rusher that you can build your entire defense around. And in days 2 and 3, you can focus a lot more on offense because they still have needs there as well. At number 3 overall, I have the Houston Texans taking Ikem Ekwonu, tackle out of NC State. Now, there are rumors right now that the Texans want to get out of this pick and maybe trade down. But right now I have them selecting Ikem Ekwonu, and I know Lovie Smith is more of a defensive-minded head coach, and, you know, it might seem like they would take Thibodeau here. I think they take Ekwonu. That offensive line is really, really bad. You want to build around your young quarterback in Davis Mills. And I know Thibodeau is considered by many to be a blue-chip prospect and someone that you don't really pass on, but Jonathan Grenard was really good for them at edge rusher this year, so I think offensive tackle would be a better use of this pick. And finally, at number 4 overall, I have the New York Jets taking Kayvon Thibodeau. I think edge rusher isn't as big of a need as people are making it out to be for them, but Thibodeau at 4, I just don't think they can pass on him. This is a really good pick for the Jets, and I think with a guy like Robert Saleh, who is a defensive-minded head coach, he likes to build in the trenches, and Thibodeau's a great guy to build your defense around for the future. The New York Giants are now on the clock at number 5 overall, and I have them selecting Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. He's kind of really volatile in terms of where he's going to go. Some people think he could go top 3, and some people think he won't go in the top 10. It really all depends, but I think at this point, with what's left on the board, I don't think they would take Charles Cross at 5, so take a blue chip prospect in Kyle Hamilton, who might be the best safety prospect ever, and I think is the best prospect in this class. Kyle Hamilton really isn't just a safety. You can play this guy at outside corner, slot corner, linebacker, really anywhere on the defense beside defensive line, and he's going to be a great guy to build your defense around for the future, especially if, you know, James Bradbury and other guys might have to leave for cap reasons. And this might be a shocker to a lot of people, but at number 6 overall, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Malik Willis. He's trained with Cam Newton before. He went to the same college as Cam Newton before transferring to Liberty. It all kind of adds up in that direction. Panthers need quarterback. I still think based on traits alone, you take this guy far above anyone else in this draft, besides maybe Sam Howell. Panthers have a lot of other needs as well, but they really need a quarterback for the future, and Malik Willis would be a great pick for them. 2 picks later, the Giants are back on the clock at number 7 overall, and I have them taking Charles Cross, tackle out of Mississippi State. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Andre Dillard coming out, and I'm not saying he's going to turn out like Andre Dillard did in the league, but he played in an air raid offense, and he's a really good pass blocker while not being an amazing run blocker. But the Giants really need a good pass blocker to protect Daniel Jones, or whoever their future quarterback may be if it isn't Daniel Jones, and I think this would be a pretty good pick by them here. However, I consider it a little bit of a reach. But they need offensive line, so get your cornerstone right tackle. And with the number 8 pick in the draft, I have the Atlanta Falcons selecting Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. In my opinion, he isn't the best cornerback in the draft, but it's definitely close between him and Derek Stingley. And as of now, I think he goes above Stingley because of injury concerns and just the fact of how good Sauce Gardner was in college. Alabama didn't even bother testing him in the championship game. They just wouldn't throw at him. And he would be a great CB2 opposite of AJ Terrell. I know the Falcons have other needs here, but I think you have Sauce Gardner on the board. you take him. At number 9 overall, I have the Denver Broncos selecting David Ojabo. He gives me kind of DeMarcus Ware vibes, so this is kind of a perfect fit, and I know DeMarcus Ware didn't have his best years in Denver, but he did play in Denver for a significant portion of his career, I believe about 4 years. And another reason David Ojabo is a perfect fit is because he fits their scheme. They need a pass rusher outside of Bradley Chubb, and Bradley Chubb gets injured a lot. So get your guy here. I think David Ojabo is a little bit raw, but his upside is maybe being the best edge rusher in this draft class. The Jets are on the clock here at number 10 overall, and I have them selecting Garrett Wilson. I think he might have to play some slot receiver in the league because he has a little bit of issues separating and press coverage on the outside, but he's really good at separating in zone defenses, and he has this really good release. I think Garrett Wilson would be a great fit for the Jets. They obviously have Elijah Moore. Corey Davis can play wide receiver too on the outside, and then you stick Garrett Wilson at your slot receiver. You can use him on jet sweeps. His speed in the open field is amazing. This is a really good pick here for the Jets for building around Zach Wilson. The Commanders are on the clock here at number 11 overall, and while they needed a quarterback desperately, it seems like their organization is not really enthralled with any quarterbacks in this draft class, so I think they go out and probably trade for a bridge quarterback or a veteran like a Jimmy Garoppolo. So with this pick here, I have them selecting Treylon Burks, who I really like. I think he has some issues with separation, but he's an amazing yak receiver. He's got great size. This would be a really good pick for the Commanders, who desperately need a receiver still. At number 12 overall, I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Derek Stingley, and this might be the steal of the draft. I think Stingley is a borderline, if not a top 5 prospect in this class. He was so amazing in 2019, and he's been banged up over the past 2 years, but I'm not going to hold that against him. I still would take him probably top 8 in this draft. Vikings also need corner desperately. Their cornerback room really isn't good, so this would be a great move by them. At number 13 overall, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Jameson Williams. Some might call this a reach, but the top 2 receivers are off the board, and Jameson Williams' stock is really volatile, especially with his ACL injury. Some think he might go as high as the top 10, and some think he might go at the end of the first round. It all really depends on what happens in the next couple months. But I really like Jameson Williams as a player. I think he's got great speed, and he was amazing this past year at Bama, and the Browns desperately need some receivers, so I think this would be a great pick for them here. At number 14 overall, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Tyler Linderbaum. I can almost guarantee he works out in the league. He's a generational center prospect, maybe the best center prospect ever. And I know they have Bradley Bozeman, but he's a free agent and he's not that great to begin with. So getting a guy who I think has a 99% chance of success in this league, it's a really good pick here by the Ravens. You need to protect Lamar. Your offense is really good as it is with J.K. Dobbins coming back. Their receiving core is improving, and that defense still looks pretty good when healthy. I think if their team stays healthy next season, the Ravens can come back and make the playoffs. Back-to-back picks here for the Eagles at 15 and 16, and at number 15 overall, I have them selecting Nakobe Dean. This guy just flies all around the field. I think he's linebacker 1 in this draft. This is a great pick by them. They desperately need a linebacker. I don't feel like I have anything else to say about it. And with the 16th pick in the draft, I have them selecting Senior Bowl standout Jermaine Johnson. I really like Jermaine Johnson. I think he's a top 5 edge in this class, and I think he's better than Karlaftis. He has a higher ceiling. They also need edge rusher desperately. I believe Derek Barnett is a free agent. The only edge rusher they have is Josh Sweat, and he's kind of meh to begin with. So if I were them, this would be a no-brainer for me. At number 17 overall, I have the Chargers selecting Travon Walker, and you'll notice instead of edge or IDL, I just put D-line next to his name, and that's because I think he can play basically everywhere on the D-line. He's kind of a traditional 5-tech, and I think you could stick him at defensive tackle and be perfectly fine. The Chargers desperately need a guy like this, so take him here and build your defense around him. At number 18 overall, I have the second quarterback in this draft so far going off the board, and I have the Saints taking Carson Strong. Now, if they actually do this, I would not like this move at all, but it seems like if they take a quarterback, this is what they're going to do. The Saints don't have any money to spend on Jameis, it seems like. They're negative $75 million in the cap, so get a franchise quarterback for your future. But I don't think Carson Strong is that guy, especially with his knee surgery and those knee issues now. I think he's a late second round, early third round prospect. Not a guy I would consider even taking in the first round, but Saints seem to really like him. They interviewed him a lot at the Senior Bowl, so I think if Malik is off the board, they go with Strong. Moving on to number 19 overall, where I have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Drake London. He seems like a perfect scheme fit for them. They have that speedy slot receiver in Quez Watkins. They have Devonte Smith, who's kind of a stereotypical wide receiver one, even though he might be a little bit skinny. And they don't have a guy like Drake London, who's kind of that big body that can go up and catch it. And they needed a guy like that, a more of a contested catch type of guy. Surround Jalen Hurts with the pieces he needs to take this team on a deep playoff run next year. At number 20 overall, I have the third quarterback going off the board, and that's Desmond Ridder. You can argue with me about whether or not this is a reach. I think Desmond Ridder is QB3 in this class right now. I like him. A lot of people seem to not like him, but the Steelers right now have him as their quarterback 2 on their board. Malik Willis obviously going to the Panthers at number 6, so they get the second best option for them. Get Desmond Ridder here at number 20. You can argue with me about Kenny Pickett, but I think he needs to be in a tropical environment, somewhere that is either in an indoor stadium or doesn't have extreme weather, because in extreme weather with his hand size, I don't think he's going to be able to play well and throw the ball at the next level, which we saw at the Senior Bowl, and I think that kind of dropped him on the Steelers board. So I think at this point, they would take Desmond Ridder over Kenny Pickett here. At number 21 overall, I have the Patriots selecting Andrew Booth. With J.C. Jackson being a free agent this offseason, we don't know if he's coming back, and obviously Stephon Gilmore got traded this past year. Their cornerback room is kind of lacking, and Bill Belichick really likes building his defenses, so get that cornerback 2, maybe even cornerback 1 if JC Jackson leaves, and you can come back again with one of the best defenses in the league and maybe make a deeper playoff run this time. At number 22 overall, I have the Raiders selecting Chris Olave. If Davante Adams leaves the Packers, which he probably is going to, he's probably going to come here and sign to play with Derek Carr, but even then, they still lack a wide receiver too. Hunter Renfrow is a slot receiver, and they have Bryan Edwards, but they seem to not really want to use him. So I think if a guy like Chris Olave is here on the board, they go and get him and maybe push for a deeper playoff run next year by getting Derek Carr some better weapons. At number 23 overall, I have the Cardinals selecting Kaiir Elam. Their cornerback situation is a little bit iffy. Byron Murphy is kind of a slot corner. I wouldn't really trust him as much on the outside. So you get a guy that can be their cornerback 1 next year, and while he does struggle with injury concerns, you're getting the potential of a top 10, maybe even top 5 cornerback in the league. So this is a really good pick by the Cardinals in my opinion. At number 24 overall, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Dax Hill, and you'll notice I put him as a safety slash corner. That's mainly because he played a lot of safety at Michigan, but he also played outside and slot corner in high school, and I think he's very versatile. They can line him up wherever they want across the defensive back room. So, you can line him up at cornerback 2, safety. I think they'll probably lose Jaron Kearse this offseason. And their secondary is really not great, so get a guy that can play wherever you want in a secondary. He's kind of a plug-and-play guy. At number 25 overall, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Kenyon Green. I could see this pick going a bunch of different ways, them selecting maybe a cornerback, maybe a wide receiver, but if Kenyon Green is here, they need interior O-line badly. You get a guy that can play either left guard or right guard for you, and I think getting Josh Allen a really good O-line will prove to be beneficial for them in the future. At number 26 overall, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Jahan Dotson, who I really like in this draft class. I think he's a top 2 receiver in this draft class. He's being kind of undervalued at the moment, but the Titans, with all the injuries they've had at receiver, starting Nick Westbrook-Ikhine a lot of times this season at their wide receiver 1 spot. Julio Jones is getting older. AJ Brown is really good, but he has been off the field a lot due to injury. So get a guy who can play slot receiver now and probably play on the outside when Julio retires. With the 27th pick in the draft, I have the Buccaneers selecting Devonte Wyatt. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, where's Jordan Davis? He hasn't gone in the draft yet. I think Devonte Wyatt is clearly IDL 1 in this class. He made Jordan Davis look a lot better than he was last season. Jordan Davis has high upside, but he's got a really, really low floor, so I would not take him in the first round. But I think Devonte Wyatt has both a high floor and high upside. The Bucks have a lot of aging D linemen, so they need a guy to replace Ndamukong Suh, who will probably retire, William Golston. Vita Vea is obviously the cornerstone at nose tackle, but getting Devonte Wyatt here will prove to be beneficial for them, and Bruce Arians seems to really like both Trask and Gabbert, so I don't see them really taking a quarterback here right now. With the 28th pick in the draft, I have the Packers selecting George Karlaftis, and this might be a little bit of a steal here, but I don't think George Karlaftis is that good. I think his floor is pretty high, but his ceiling is probably low compared to some other edge rushers in this class, so the late first round is where I would probably take him, and the Packers are probably going to cut both Preston and Zadarius Smith, leaving only Rashawn Gary, who is really good, but that leaves a hole at the other outside linebacker spot, so get a guy in George Karlaftis that can be their second edge rusher, and they still have a really good defense at that point. And we're now down to the 29th pick in the draft, where I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Trevor Penning. I think this is a bit of a steal. Trevor Penning at the Senior Bowl was an absolute stud and could honestly be a top 20 pick in this class. It just so happened that he fell here to the Dolphins and they need offensive line, so I would take him here. We need a left tackle or probably a right tackle because Tua throws left-handed, so he can be a blindside blocker wherever that may be. So if Trevor Penning is here at 29, I think it's a no-brainer that the Dolphins take him. With most of the top edge rushers off the board now, I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Trent McDuffie with the 30th pick in the draft. They need cornerback. I think L'Jarius Sneed is at his best when he's in the slot, so get a guy on the outside that can be a great outside corner and even a CB1 at some point in the future. And with the 31st pick in the draft, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Senior Bowl standout Zion Johnson. He's kind of proved now that he's worth a first-round pick. Cincinnati Bengals desperately need a line. It was shown throughout the year, and especially in the Super Bowl when they got killed by that Rams D-line. And I know offensive tackle is more valuable than interior O-line, but I think Zion Johnson is the safest pick out of any O-lineman left on the board. So if I was the Bengals, I would take him here, no question. And finally, with the 32nd pick in the draft, I have the Detroit Lions going defense again and selecting Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. I think this is a really big steal. Devin Lloyd is maybe a top 20 player in this class, and getting him in the late first round is unbelievable. And I know a lot of people are going to wonder why I'm selecting a linebacker here over a quarterback. And it's mainly because they have a pick 2 picks later, and I think the Jaguars most definitely won't take quarterback, but they have a bit of a higher chance of picking Devin Lloyd, so just pick him here to be safe.